For more on this, we are being joined by Heino Klink, former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for East Asia from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on WION. So it appears that the U.S. brokered this ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. Many are wondering whether or not something similar would happen with Gaza as well in the last couple of months of the Biden administration.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And certainly the fact that Israel and Hezbollah have agreed to the ceasefire brokered by the United States and France is welcome news, not just in the region, but in the world, as we have seen just too much violence in the Middle East and the areas surrounding Israel for way too long. People are certainly hopeful that a ceasefire can be achieved in Gaza. I think what has to fundamentally happen is that Hamas must release the hostages, all of the hostages, in order for that ceasefire to be acceptable to the Israeli government. I think that is reasonable from a Israeli perspective. I just don't know if it's realistic to expect, given Hamas's history.
And we learned that President Biden sees a, quote, window of opportunity for Israel-Saudi normalization as well. How likely is that?
Well, I think a prerequisite is the cessation of hostilities in Gaza. You may recall just prior to the barbaric Hamas attacks of October 7th of last year against Israel, it seemed as if Israel was on the cusp of achieving a peace treaty and normalizing relations with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Many observers believe that the timing of the attack was not completely coincidental, and that part of the motivation behind the timing was to derail a potential peace deal. If we look back at the first term of President Trump, he was able to achieve historic peace agreements between Israel and other Arab states through the Abraham Accords. And it is, again, hoped that in his second term, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia might also be able to conclude such an agreement with Israel.
And finally, we talk about this ceasefire deal. President Biden and his administration are celebrating it as a victory, at least for their administration. They got something finally. But what about compliance? Who will ensure it, given the leaderless structure of Hezbollah at this point and the hard stance they've had against Israel, and just judging from experience?
Well, that's a very good question, because what we have to remember is that this ceasefire is meant to implement UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which was enacted in 2006, so almost 20 years ago. And Hezbollah broke the conditions of this agreement with Israel on October 8th of last year, when one day after Hamas's brutal terrorist assault, Hezbollah started launching attacks against northern Israel. So, theoretically or conceptually, the Lebanese army is supposed to move into that area south of the Litani River. There is a United Nations peacekeeping force there as well. That's been there actually since 1978. Both of those entities have not had great success in ensuring that peace is kept and those Security Council resolutions are actually enforced. I'm optimistic, cautiously so, that because Hezbollah has been so decimated, as you mentioned, their entire leadership structure has been eliminated. But not only that, its military capabilities have been degraded to a great extent that, at least in the short run, Hezbollah will not have a stomach for returning to the fight against Israel, because it just has no capability to do so. The fear, of course, is that Hezbollah will take its time now to regroup, reorganize, re-equip, retrain north of the Litani River and other areas, for instance, of the Bekaa Valley, and basically prepare for perhaps a continuation of hostilities sometimes in the future.
Well, thank you so much for all of that. Heino Klink, a very happy Thanksgiving to you, and thank you for joining us.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.